The transport ship broke through the purple clouds of the station's atmosphere shield. An ambassador got her first look at the heart of galactic civilization. The Council station was massive. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a neutral ground where every known species could meet and talk and trade. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Lights blinked in patterns she did not recognize. This was the center of everything, and humanity was about to knock on the door. Was 53 years old. She had spent 30 years learning how to talk to people who did not want to listen. She had negotiated peace treaties on Earth, stopped wars before they started, and convinced enemies to become friends. But this was different. This was not just one country meeting another. This was one species meeting hundreds. The weight of it sat heavy on her shoulders. She turned to look at her guards. There were 4 of them. Sergeant Major stood closest, a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that never stopped moving. Behind her they wore simple black uniforms, no armor, no helmets, and most importantly, no weapons. Had asked about this during the mission briefing back on Earth. The generals had smiled and told her not to worry. These 4 are the best we have, they had said. They don't need weapons. She had not understood then. She was not sure she understood now, but she trusted them. The ship docked with a gentle bump. The doors opened and warm air rushed in. It smelled strange, like copper and flowers and something burning far away. Took a breath, straightened her formal jacket and stepped out onto the walkway. The welcoming committee was waiting. There were at least 20 different species present, and recognized only a few from the briefing files. They stood at the front, tall creatures with shiny black shells and too many eyes. Their leader wore ceremonial armor covered in blades and carried a staff that hummed with energy. Behind him, his guards held weapons that looked like they could cut through starship hulls. They were there too. They were huge, nearly 8 feet tall, with green scales and mouths full of teeth. They had evolved on a planet where everything wanted to kill everything else, and they looked like it. Their guards carried plasma rifles and stood in perfect military formation. Other species filled the dock. Some were small and furry. Some were tall and thin like walking sticks. Some floated in special tanks because they needed water to breathe. All of them watched the humans with curiosity and something that looked like hunger. Walked forward, her guards moving with her in a diamond formation. She stopped in front of and bowed her head slightly, the way the briefing had taught her. She said, "I am Ambassador of Earth. Humanity thanks you for this invitation and hopes to build friendship with all the species of the Council." Made a clicking sound that the translator in her ear turned into words. "Ambassador, you are welcome here. The Council has watched your species for some time. We are curious to learn more." The welcome was polite, but could feel the coldness behind it. Humanity was new. Humanity was weak. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, while some of these species had been sailing between stars for thousands of centuries. To them, humans were children stumbling into an adult conversation. The formal greetings continued. Representatives from each species came forward to speak their welcomes. Some were warm, most were not, but smiled and nodded and said the right words because that was her job. Then raised one of his 4 arms and pointed at Sergeant Major. "A question, Ambassador," he said. "Your guards carry no weapons." The dock went quiet. Every alien eye turned to look at the 4 humans in black. "That is correct," said carefully. "Is this an insult?" asked. His voice was sharp now. "You come to the heart of galactic civilization and bring unarmed guards. Do you mean to say that our station is too primitive to threaten you, that we are not worth the effort of real protection?" Murmurs spread through the crowd. The guards shifted, their hands moving closer to their weapons. A small blue creature near the back made a whistling sound that the translator called laughter. Felt sweat form on her neck, but she kept her voice calm. "No insult is intended. Human diplomatic guards do not carry weapons. They do not need them." Silence. Then made the clicking sound again, and this time the translator called it amusement. Do not need them. Ambassador, my honor guard carries weapons that can punch through military-grade shielding. The guards behind me could tear a ground vehicle apart with their bare hands, and your people bring nothing. We bring ourselves, Sergeant Major said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Every eye turned to her. Guards growled at the interruption. An officer took a step forward, hand on his blade. Did not move. She stood perfectly still, perfectly relaxed, watching everything and everyone at once. Studied her for a long moment. Then he turned back to, Your guard speaks out of turn, Ambassador, but I will allow it this once because I am curious. What does she mean? Looked at, the sergeant major gave a tiny nod. She means exactly what she said, replied. Humans have been fighting each other for a very long time. We have become quite good at it, good enough that weapons are optional. More silence, then more of that clicking laughter spreading through the delegation like a wave. Optional, repeated. Very well, Ambassador, we shall see. For now, welcome to the council station. Your quarters have been prepared. We will begin formal negotiations in the morning. The welcoming committee began to break apart. Species moved away in their own groups, talking in their own languages, making sounds that the translator could not catch. Caught looks being thrown at her guards, mockery, pity, a few that might have been concern. Sergeant Major moved closer to as they walked toward their quarters. They think we are fools, said quietly. Yes, agreed. Let them. Sometimes it is useful to be underestimated. Smiled, it was not a warm smile, and if they test that belief. Thought about her answer for a long moment. Then we show them why they were wrong. 3 days passed on the council station. 3 days of meetings and negotiations and careful words. Ambassador sat in rooms with creatures that had scales and creatures that had feathers and creatures that had no solid form at all. She listened to their concerns about humanity. She answered their questions. She made promises and asked for promises in return. The council was not sure about humans. That much was clear. Some species saw potential trading partners. Others saw future threats. They wanted to study human technology. They wanted to know about human military strength. Everyone wanted something and had to figure out what humanity could offer without giving away too much. Her guard stayed close through all of it. Sergeant Major stood behind her chair during every meeting and watched the doors, watched everything else. They said nothing. They carried nothing. And every day someone from another species made a joke about the unarmed humans. They were the worst. Their ambassador, a massive creature named Al, made no effort to hide his dislike for humanity. He called them weak. He called them soft. He called them prey animals pretending to be predators. His guards laughed with him, showing their teeth in what was definitely not a smile. But there was tension among the that did not understand at first. Al was loyal to the council, but not all of his people felt the same way. Whispers reached her ears about separatists, about factions that wanted to leave the council and conquer on their own, about groups that saw humanity as the perfect first target. On the morning of the 4th day, those whispers became screams. Was in the main diplomatic hall when the explosion happened. The doors at the far end of the room blew inward, throwing 2 guards across the floor like toys. Before anyone could react, figures poured through the smoke. Figures. But they wore different armor than the council guards, darker and covered in symbols that looked like claw marks. Separatists. They moved fast, faster than creatures that size should be able to move. Pulse weapons fired in quick bursts. Neural disruptors hummed through the air. Delegates screamed and ran and fell. The honor guard tried to form a line, but the separatists cut through them in seconds. Blades flashed. Bodies hit the floor. Could not move. Fear locked her legs in place. She had been in dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. Nothing with so much blood and so much noise and so much death. Then hands grabbed her shoulders and pulled her down behind the conference table. Sergeant Major was there, face calm, eyes sharp. "Stay low," said. "Stay quiet, we have you." The other 3 guards formed up around them, crouched on the left, watching the separatists advance, covered the right, faced the rear, checking for any enemies coming from behind. They moved together like parts of the same machine, like they had done this 1,000 times before. The separatists took control of the room in less than 2 minutes. When the firing stopped, nearly every guard from every species lay dead or wounded on the floor. Delegates huddled in groups, crying and begging. Only the humans remained standing, grouped around their ambassador in their perfect diamond formation. The leader of the separatists walked through the blood and smoke like he was taking a pleasant stroll. He was huge even for a, with scars running across his scales and one eye that had been replaced with a glowing red implant. Recognized him from the intelligence files. Wanted criminal, terrorist, mass murderer. Looked at the surviving delegates and made a sound like rocks grinding together. The translator called it satisfaction. "The council thought they were safe here," said. His voice was deep and rough. "They thought their guards could protect them. They were wrong." He walked closer to the human group, and his remaining eye fixed on Sergeant Major. "And what is this, the weaponless ones?" He laughed again, and his soldiers joined him. "I heard about you. The humans who think they are too good for weapons. Tell me, soft thing, what will you do now? Bore me to death with diplomacy." Said nothing. Her eyes moved across the room, counting enemies, nodding positions, tracking weapons. 14 separatists, 10 pulse rifles, 4 neural disruptors, 2 heavy plasma cannons near the blown-open doors, 1 leader with on his hip and confidence in his step. She kept breathing, slow and steady, waiting. Turned to address the whole room. "Here is what will happen," he announced. "The Council will reject humanity's petition. Permanently. Human colonies will be given to the sovereignty, and the human ambassador will die on live broadcast so the whole galaxy can see what happens to weak species who reach above their place." Cries of protest rose from some of the delegates. Silenced them with a look. "Do not test me," he said. "I have enough weapons to kill everyone in this room 10 times over. Cooperate and some of you may survive. Resist and you all die. The choice is simple." He turned back to the human group and pointed at Ambassador. "Bring me the human leader. It is time to send a message." 2 separatist soldiers stepped forward. They were young but eager, their weapons held ready, their teeth showing. They pushed past the fallen bodies and broken furniture, heading straight for the humans. Sergeant Major shifted her weight slightly, adjusted his stance, and moved a half-step closer together. To anyone watching, it looked like nervous twitching, like fear. It was not fear. The separatist soldiers reached the group. One of them grabbed for Ambassador's arm. His clawed hand was still reaching when moved. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. His hand shot out and caught the soldier's wrist. She twisted, using his own weight against him, and his elbow joint bent the wrong way with a sound like breaking branches. Before he could scream, her other hand struck his throat, and the scream died before it began. She was already spinning, taking his pulse rifle from his falling body, bringing it up to fire. The second soldier had time to blink. He did not have time to do anything else. The shot took him in the chest, and he flew backward into one of his companions. And moved at the same moment. 3 more separatists went down before anyone understood what was happening. Weapons changed hands. Bodies hit the floor. The humans moved through the chaos like water through rocks, flowing around attacks, striking at weak points, never stopping. The room went silent, except for the sound of falling bodies. Stared at the scene with his one real eye wide and his fake eye flickering. 4 of his soldiers were down. 4 more were wounded, and the humans stood in their diamond formation, still protecting their ambassador, now holding the weapons of their enemies. Sergeant Major met his gaze. She was not even breathing hard. "You were saying something about weak species," she said quietly. "Please continue." Roared and charged. Was fast, faster than something his size had any right to be. 8 feet of scaled muscle and killing instinct launched across the room like a missile, claws out, teeth bared, the on his hip forgotten in his rage. He did not need a weapon. He was a weapon. His species had evolved on a world where survival meant being the most dangerous thing in any fight. He had killed dozens of enemies with his bare hands. He had torn through armored vehicles. He had once ripped a door off a military transport ship because it would not open fast enough. Sergeant Major watched him come. She watched his weight shift as he pushed off from the floor. She watched his shoulders rotate as he prepared to strike. She watched the muscles in his neck tense as he opened his mouth to roar. She saw everything because that was what she was trained to do, to see, to understand, to act. She stepped to the side. It was a small movement, just a few inches, but it was exactly the right few inches. Charge missed her by less than the width of a hand. His claws tore through empty air where she had been standing a heartbeat before. His momentum carried him forward, unable to stop, unable to turn. Helped him along. Her hands caught his arm as he passed. She turned with him, adding her movement to his, redirecting his power instead of fighting it. Was strong. Stronger than any human could ever hope to be. But strength meant nothing if you could not land a hit, and had no intention of being hit. She guided him into the central support column of the room. The column was made of reinforced metal designed to hold up the ceiling of the diplomatic hall. Hit it face first at full speed. The impact echoed through the room like a bomb going off. The column cracked, bounced off and staggered backward, his face a mess of broken scales and leaking blood. He should have gone down. Any other opponent would have gone down, but was not any other opponent. He shook his head, sending drops of blood flying, and turned to face again. His remaining real eye was filled with hate. "Lucky," he growled. "That was luck. It will not happen twice." Said nothing, she waited. Attacked again, slower this time, more careful. He had learned from his mistake. His claws swept in controlled arcs, testing her defenses, looking for openings. He was treating her like a real threat now. That was good. That was honest, but it would not help him. Moved like smoke. She bent under a swipe that would have taken her head off. She twisted away from a grab that could have crushed her spine. She stepped over a low kick that shattered the floor tiles where she had been standing. Every attack missed by the smallest possible margin. Every movement was exactly what it needed to be and nothing more. She was not wasting energy. She was not showing off. She was simply not being where the attacks were. The surviving separatists watched with growing horror. Their leader, the strongest and most dangerous of them all, was fighting a creature half his size and losing, not because the human was stronger, not because she was faster, but because she knew exactly what he was going to do before he did it. Decades of training, centuries of human knowledge about combat and anatomy and the weaknesses of living things. The guards who served in the human diplomatic corps did not just learn how to fight. They learned how every known species moved. They learned where the joints were weak. They learned which nerves carried pain and which muscles controlled movement and which blood vessels fed the brain. They studied bodies the way artists studied paint. And now was applying that knowledge. She let overextend on a punch. Her hand shot out and pressed 3 fingers into a spot just below his arm joint. It was a tiny movement, a touch that an observer might have missed entirely, but screamed like he had been stabbed. The nervous system was different from a human one. The nerve clusters were in different places. The pain responses were triggered by different stimuli, but pain was pain and knew exactly where to find it. Stumbled back, clutching his arm. She had not broken anything. She had not cut him. But the pain was overwhelming, flooding his brain with signals that drowned out everything else. Before he could recover, she moved again. Another touch, another pressure point, this time on his neck. His legs stopped working. Collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. He lay on the floor, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing but no sounds coming out. He could still feel everything. He just could not move. Stood over him. She was not even breathing hard. Across the room and finished their own work. The remaining separatists were down. Some were unconscious. Some were too injured to fight. Some were simply too afraid to try. The humans had moved through them like wind through leaves, using their own weapons against them, striking weak points that no one had known existed. The delegates watched in stunned silence, had found cover behind an overturned table, and was staring at the humans with all of his many eyes. Al, the ambassador, had pressed himself against a wall, his earlier confidence completely gone. Other species huddled together, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The whole fight had taken less than 90 seconds. Ambassador stood up slowly. Her guards had never left her side. Even while fighting, even while disabling a dozen enemies, they had maintained their protective formation around her. She had not been touched. She had not been in danger for a single moment. She looked at Sergeant Major. "Are you hurt?" Shook her head. "No, ma'am." "Any of you?" And responded in turn. "No, ma'am, negative, all good, Ambassador." Nodded and turned to look at, lying paralyzed on the floor, the terrorist who had thought he could take the galaxy's most powerful station by force, the warrior who had called humans weak. He stared up at her with terror in his eyes. "You made a mistake," she told him quietly. "You looked at us and saw prey. You saw small bodies and soft skin and no weapons, and you thought that meant we could not hurt you. You were wrong." She knelt down so she could look directly into his eyes. "Humans have been fighting and killing each other for longer than your species has existed. We have turned violence into an art form. We have spent thousands of years learning every possible way to cause pain and death. We know the weaknesses of our own bodies better than any doctor. And when we met your species, we learned yours too." She stood up again. "My guards carry no weapons because they do not need them. Every enemy is an opportunity. Every attack is a gift. Every weapon in this room belongs to them the moment they decide to take it." She looked around at the watching delegates. "Remember this, not as a threat, but as a fact. Humanity wants peace. We want friendship and trade and cooperation. But if you force us to fight, we will show you what 10,000 years of war has taught us." Security forces finally arrived, flooding through the damaged doors with weapons ready. They found the separatists already defeated, and the human delegation standing calmly in the middle of the carnage. Sergeant Major handed her captured weapon to the first security officer who approached. "You might want to call medical," she said. "Some of these will recover, some of them will not." The officer stared at her, then at the fallen, then back at her. "You did this?" he asked. "All of this?" Smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. "Yes." The next few hours were chaos. Medical teams rushed through the diplomatic hall, carrying away the wounded and the dead. Security forces swarmed the station, locking down sections and hunting for any remaining separatists. Council officials shouted orders that no one seemed to follow. The careful order of galactic civilization had been shattered, and everyone was scrambling to pick up the pieces. Ambassador and her guards were taken to a secure medical bay for examination. Doctors from 3 different species poked and prodded them, scanning for injuries, taking samples, running tests. They found nothing wrong with the humans. Not a scratch, not a bruise, not even elevated heart rates. The guards had fought a battle against trained soldiers twice their size and come out without a single mark. The doctors did not know what to say. They kept running the same tests over and over as if the machines must be broken. But the results were always the same. The humans were fine. Arrived at the medical bay 2 hours after the attack. He had changed out of his damaged ceremonial armor and now wore simple clothing that made him look smaller, older, tired. His many eyes studied the humans with an expression that translator could not identify. Ambassador, he said, I must speak with your guards, specifically with Sergeant Major. Looked at, who nodded. Go ahead, said, but I will stay to observe. Walked over to where sat on a medical table. He stopped a few feet away, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture careful and controlled. He was afraid, realized. The most powerful member of the delegation was afraid of a single human woman. How? Asked. The word came out sharp and sudden, like he had been holding it back and could not contain it any longer. I need to understand. My people have files on human military capabilities. Your species is unremarkable, average strength less than half what it can produce. Your reaction times are slow compared to most council species. You have short, weak bones, poor natural armor. On paper, you should not be able to threaten anyone. He pointed toward the door, toward the diplomatic hall where the battle had happened. But I watched you. I watched all of you. You moved through those separatists like they were not even there. You disabled warriors, the most dangerous natural fighters in the galaxy, with your bare hands. And you did it without taking a single injury. How is that possible? Considered the question for a long moment. She was not used to explaining herself. Her job was to protect, not to teach. But something in this voice told her this was important, not just for the negotiations, but for everything that would come after. You have files on our capabilities, she said finally. But you studied the wrong things. You looked at what we can do, strength, speed, natural weapons, physical measurements. You never asked what we practice. Practice, repeated. Humans are violent, said. It was not a boast or an apology, it was simply a fact. We have been violent for as long as we have existed. Before we had writing, we had weapons. Before we had cities, we had wars. We killed each other over food, over land, over ideas, over nothing at all. Violence is part of what we are. She stood up from the medical table and faced directly. But humans are also clever and stubborn, and we do not accept limitations. So when we fought each other, we did not just fight. We studied. We experimented. We learned. Every war taught us something new. Every battle gave us new techniques. Every defeat made us more determined to win next time. Martial arts, offered from her seat. That is what we call them, the arts of war. Nodded. For thousands of years, humans have developed systems for fighting, wrestling, boxing, sword techniques, empty-hand combat, ways to use an opponent's strength against them, ways to strike weak points that cause maximum damage, ways to control a fight without relying on size or power. She held up her hand. I am smaller than I am weaker, slower. I cannot break through armor with my fists or bite through metal with my teeth. But I do not need to. I know exactly where a body is vulnerable. I know which joints bend and which do not. I know where the nerve clusters are located. I know how their balance works, how their weight shifts, what movements they must make before they can attack. You studied us, said slowly. Understanding was beginning to dawn in his many eyes. We studied everyone, said. The moment humanity made contact with alien life, we began gathering information. Anatomy, movement patterns, weaknesses. It is what we do. It is what we have always done. We learn how to defeat our enemies before they become our enemies so that we are ready if they ever do. Was silent for a long time. The other doctors and officials in the room watched the conversation with wide eyes and still bodies. Every council species evolved past their violent phase, said finally. His voice was quiet, almost sad. We developed technology to do our fighting for us. Weapons that could kill at a distance. Machines that could wage war without risk to ourselves. We let our bodies become soft because we did not need to be hard anymore. We did not, said simply. No, you did not. Looked at her with something that might have been respect or might have been fear, probably both. You kept training, you kept learning. Even after you developed the same technologies, you kept practicing the old ways. Because we knew that technology can fail, said. Weapons can be lost or broken or taken. Machines can be hacked or disabled. But skill stays with you. Training stays with you. The knowledge of how to fight is something no one can take away." She gestured at her fellow guards. "The human diplomatic corps trains its members for 10 years before they are allowed to serve. We learn hand-to-hand combat from a dozen different traditions. We study the anatomy of every known species. We practice against simulated opponents of every size and shape and fighting style. By the time we finish, we can disable any creature we encounter, armed or unarmed, in any situation." Made a small clicking sound that did not translate. "We do not carry weapons," continued, "because we are weapons. Everything else is just convenience. Every enemy we face is carrying equipment we can take. Every opponent is providing us with resources for their own defeat." The room was completely silent. Ambassador stood and walked over to stand beside her guard. "We did not come here to threaten you. We came to join your council as friends and partners. We want trade and cooperation and mutual benefit. Violence is not our first choice." "But it is always available," said. It was not a question. "Yes," admitted. "It is always available. Humanity has never lost the ability to fight. We have simply learned when to use it and when not to. Restraint is part of our training too, maybe the most important part." Was quiet for another long moment. Then he straightened his posture and folded his hands in a formal gesture. "I believe I owe you an apology, Ambassador. When you arrived, I mocked your guards for carrying no weapons. I believed it was foolishness or arrogance. I was wrong." He looked at. "I was very wrong." Did not smile, but her expression softened slightly. "No apology necessary. You did not have enough information to judge us fairly. Now you do." "Now I do," agreed. "And I suspect the rest of the council will feel the same when they review the security recordings." He turned back to Ambassador. "I believe the vote on humanity's petition will proceed quite differently now. If you will excuse me, I have some preparations to make." He walked toward the door, then paused. "One more question, Sergeant Major. When you fought, you disabled him but did not kill him. You had many opportunities. Why did you spare him?" His answer was immediate. "Because I chose to." Nodded slowly. "Yes, I think that may be the most frightening thing of all." He left without another word. The vote took place 3 days after the attack. The great chamber of the council was filled with representatives from every species, hundreds of delegates packed into seats that curved around a central stage like the rings of a planet. Lights floated in the air, recording everything for broadcast across 1,000 worlds. This was the moment that would decide humanity's place in galactic civilization. Ambassador stood at the podium in the center of the stage. Her guards flanked her in their usual diamond formation, still unarmed, still calm, still watching everything with those steady eyes that never seemed to blink. The attitude in the room had changed since the attack. Before, the other species had looked at the humans with mockery or dismissal. Now they looked at them with caution, with respect, with something that might have been fear hiding behind polite expressions. Called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber, silencing the murmurs and whispers. "We are here to vote on the petition of humanity to join the Galactic Council as a full member species. The traditional debate period has concluded. All arguments have been heard. It is time to decide." He gestured toward the voting mechanism, a holographic display that would show the result for all to see. "Those in favor of accepting humanity's petition, signal now." Lights began to glow across the chamber, green for yes. The delegation lit up first, all green. Then the small blue creatures whose names still could not pronounce. One by one, species added their support. Even the voted yes. Al, the ambassador who had called humans weak just days before, pressed his voting pad with hands that shook slightly. He did not meet's eyes. When the final count appeared on the display, it was unanimous. Every single species had voted in favor. The chamber erupted in sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. Approval, relief, uncertainty, fear, all mixed together in a wave of noise that washed over the human delegation. Allowed herself a small smile. Then she raised her hand, and the chamber slowly went quiet. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was calm and warm. "Humanity is honored by your trust. We know that this decision was not easy, especially after the events of recent days. We know that some of you are still afraid of what we represent. We understand that fear. We share it sometimes when we look in the mirror." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Humans are dangerous. We will not pretend otherwise. We have spent our entire existence learning how to survive and how to kill. Violence is part of our history and part of our nature. It is written in our bodies and our cultures and our oldest stories." The chamber was very quiet now. "But violence is not all we are. We are also artists and builders and dreamers. We make music and tell stories and raise children who will do better than we did. We fall in love and make friends and sacrifice ourselves for people we will never meet. We are capable of terrible destruction and incredible creation, sometimes in the same breath." She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. "We did not come here to conquer you. We came here to learn from you, to trade with you, to stand beside you as partners and allies. We have been alone in our little corner of the galaxy for so long, fighting only ourselves. Now we have the chance to be part of something larger, something better." Her voice grew stronger. "We will protect this council with the same dedication that we protect our own families. Any threat to galactic peace is a threat to us. Any enemy of civilization is our enemy. And as you have seen, we take our enemies very seriously." She smiled slightly. "But we would much rather make friends." The vote was complete. Humanity was in, but knew that the real work was just beginning. Trust would have to be built one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one small act of cooperation at a time. The galaxy had accepted humanity out of fear as much as hope. Turning that fear into genuine friendship would take years, maybe generations. After the ceremony, approached in a quiet corner of the reception hall. The party was in full swing around them, but no one came close to the human delegation. There was an invisible barrier around them now, a circle of respect and wariness that kept the other species at a distance. "May I speak frankly, Ambassador?" asked. "Please." There was silence for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Your guards could have killed everyone in that room," he said quietly. "The separatists, yes, but also anyone else who got in their way. I have reviewed the security recordings many times. I have spoken with military experts from a dozen species. They all agree on one thing." "What is that?" "That your guards were holding back, significantly." Many eyes studied her face. "The separatists were not defeated. They were allowed to lose. Your people could have killed them all in seconds, but they chose to disable instead. They chose mercy." Nodded slowly. "Yes, they did." "Why?" She turned to look at Sergeant Major, who was standing a few feet away, pretending not to listen to the conversation. "Because that is what we train them to do," said. "Violence is a tool, a very powerful tool, but a tool is only as good as the hand that wields it. We do not train our guards just to fight. We train them to think, to choose, to understand when violence is necessary and when it is not." She turned back to, "We spent centuries learning how to hurt. We spent the last 2 centuries learning when not to. That is the real lesson humanity has learned from its violent history. Not just how to win fights, but how to avoid them. Not just how to kill enemies, but how to turn them into friends." Considered this for a long moment. "And if someone refuses to become a friend, if someone threatens your people, your homes, your families?" His expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew colder. "Then we remind them why they should have made a different choice, quickly, thoroughly, and permanently." The made his clicking sound again. That is what I was afraid you would say. It should not frighten you, replied. We do not want conquest or domination. We want a seat at this table and a voice in this council. We want trade, cooperation, alliance. We want to be good neighbors in a galaxy that has more than enough violence already. She extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. We are offering that hand in peace. We hope you will take it. Looked at the offered hand. Then he reached out with one of his own arms and grasped it carefully. I believe I will, Ambassador. I believe we all will. He released her hand and stepped back. But I will also make a note in the official council records, a recommendation for all future dealings with humanity. What recommendation? Translator rendered something that might have been a smile. Do not threaten the humans. They have forgotten more about violence than we ever knew, and they have not forgotten nearly enough. He gave a formal bow and walked away, leaving standing with her guards. Sergeant Major stepped closer. That went well, she said. Laughed quietly. It did, better than I expected. The galaxy is watching us now. They will be watching for a long time. Yes. Looked around the reception hall at the dozens of species keeping their careful distance, at the new future spreading out before humanity like an unexplored ocean. Let them watch. Let them learn who we really are. Not just warriors, not just survivors, but friends if they will have us. She straightened her jacket and prepared to rejoin the party. And if they will not have us as friends? Smiled. It was still not a warm smile, but there was something almost gentle in it. Then we will be patient. We have learned many things over the centuries, Ambassador. Patience is one of them. She paused. But violence is still available, just in case. Nodded once. Just in case. Together, the human delegation walked forward into the crowded hall, into the future, into whatever the galaxy had waiting for them. They were small. They were soft. They carried no weapons. And everyone stepped out of their way.